Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the 2015 Pokemon Video Game National Championships here in Indianapolis, Indiana. My name is Evan Latt, and I am joined once again by Scott Glaza. We just saw a very fitting early morning match, Gavin versus John, for our round one on this nice July 4th. Really exciting match. Went the full 3 games, which I would expect to be the norm for today, with the level of talent that's just here in this day 2 cut.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with a tournament like this one, we should expect all the matches to be great.
Yep.
John Huth versus Gavin Michaels in the first round of a tournament is not the sort of thing you expect to lead off with, but
No.
I think it sets the tone for the type of tournament we're likely to have today. Lots of really great players. It's absolutely loaded group of players in Day 2 Swiss. So every matchup should be great. The players who get on the top cut should be even better, and I'm excited to see who and what comes out on top. There's so many different Pokemon being used, players that are still active in the tournament. There's a lot of different backgrounds, players from all over the country, players from different ages, different levels of experience. So seeing who pulls it off this year should be really fun.
Yeah, definitely going to be exciting. We will have way more matches for you later on today as well. But for right now, we're just going to take a look at some of the key Pokemon from that last game. Of course, Gavin did win out over John, but John's team made it difficult for him. And part of that was this Togekiss that we're seeing on screen. Redirection, he mentioned it in the interview, that follow me, one of the most difficult things to deal with in this meta.
It definitely is. We certainly saw Gavin trying hard to do that by, taunting it and preferring to not allow it to follow me. Instead, making it use that Air Slash, which we saw was pretty dangerous as well, seeming to flinch every time he used it. Togekiss does have that Serene Grace ability that doubles the chance of secondary effects from activating, which we certainly saw the effectiveness of, and as we see pretty much all Togekiss using it. If you're not using Serene Grace, you're certainly doing something quite strange.
Well, you're trying to hope for that Super Luck.
Yeah, I mean, which is ironic, right? Because Serene Grace is what will give you the Super Luck. A little bit confusing, but Air Slash was certainly very powerful there. Follow Me is very powerful there. We never really saw the rest of what Togekiss could do. A little bit curious about that. I was kind of expecting a Tailwind. It's one of those things that you just expect with the Togekiss Extra Drill archetype. Not that we've seen a whole lot of it this year, I guess. So I guess John kind of retreading new ground. But I'd assume it's there, right? It's a little strange not to see it.
You see from these stats just how unpredictable Togekiss can be, which is what makes it such a scary Pokemon, especially to see in Team Preview, because you're never really sure if you're pretty sure it's going to have Follow Me and Air Slash. But other than that, is it going to Tailwind? Will it have Thunder Wave for even more speed control? Will it have Roost to, heal off all of that damage? Encore is another incredibly disruptive and powerful move that it can get. There are just so many options for this Pokemon.
There definitely is. And I mean, John's the sort of player, too, you have to be very careful with, because if there is a strange option available, he's definitely the sort of player who would have it, right? Yeah. So you have to be very careful. Encore is on his team, just on another Pokemon. So certainly the sort of thing you think, well, maybe he does have this. And even the offensive moves are pretty interesting. I remember first when Pokemon X and Y came out and people were playing on the doubles battle spot, we saw a lot of the more offensive Togekiss. We're seeing Choice Specs and Choice Scarf. That's certainly gone away for the most part. We've gone back to the more defensive Togekiss. We see Citrus Berry, Rocky Helmet, and Safety Goggles to avoid becoming Amoonguss fodder being the most popular choices. But it does have an option of running a pretty decent offensive set. It's not the fastest Pokemon out there when you take away Tailwind and Thunder Wave from it, but its special attack is naturally pretty good. So if it does get attacks off, it's surprisingly dangerous now with that new Fairy typing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And especially when it's paired with a Pokemon like the Azumarill, which can, as soon as it sets up a Belly Drum, it immediately threatens your entire team. And we saw just how dangerous that can be in Game 2. And having Encore, having Follow Me, having Tailwind, having all of these different supportive options, Thunder Wave, those are huge for getting a Pokemon like Azumarill set up.
Yeah, Azumarill's power kind of comes in the strength of its teammates, where if we can Belly Drum and just get really only 2 unresisted Aqua Jets off, you're probably going to win the game, but pulling that off is hard. The Belly Drum does a bunch of damage and wastes one of your turns, which is almost a bigger deal. Azumarill, not the fastest Pokemon out there, so when it's not using a priority attack, it's probably going to have to take a hit to go off, or at least your team is. So Follow Me is a big deal. Lopunny did a really great job of helping out as well with both Fake Out and Teeter Dance, although I don't think Teeter Dance ever actually helped Azumarill. The option was there. I'm sure John has done it more than once over the course of the tournament to help out that way. Unfortunately for John, it seems like every time we see him on stream, he's against Taunt, which really messes with a team like his that has so many Pokemon that are meant to do things other than direct damage. But we both kind of see the importance of Taunt and I guess how dangerous these Pokemon can be, because even with Taunt there, Togekiss and Lopunny both had pretty good series both times we saw them.
Yeah, I mean, Taunt is one of those moves that people frequently overlook when they're building their team building. It's one of the reasons why Trick Room always becomes popular sort of around the national season. But it looks like a lot of the top players are, the reason why they're top players is they adjust for things like that. They're packing that Taunt on at least one Pokemon just in case they come across these rogue options. I mean, anything that takes away some of the variance in the game is going to be good for a top player.
It definitely is, and I think that's another thing that is important with team construction. I remember going into Nationals in the past when there was best of one Swiss. It used to be a big deal that people were talking about, especially top players, where if you're going to lose, you kind of want to lose to being outplayed, not to your opponent just having something completely ridiculous you're not ready for. So a lot of people tried to carry Taunt back then just to be like, okay, I don't want to get surprised. It's a little bit different in best of 3 Swiss, where even if you lose one game to something crazy happening, you kind of slow down and adjust. But still, I mean, I think knowing what this sort of team is going to do doesn't necessarily mean you can stop it. So carrying Taunt is really important. Almost always from Thundurus, but some other Pokemon can use it. And Thundurus is kind of an interesting struggle trying to fit that Taunt on to deal with this sort of Pokemon. Thunder Wave and Thunderbolt are pretty much mandatory. So Hidden Power, an Ice-type Hidden Power, Protect sometimes. Even like Psychic for a Moongus. I've seen Grass down on it a few times. In addition to Swagger, the most common remaining move there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices, and sometimes people try to drop Taunt, but we've certainly seen why you shouldn't in this case. Definitely would have been a much more difficult matchup for both Gavin against John and then Wolf yesterday without Taunt there.
Yeah. So Togekiss, one of the reasons you would want to carry Taunt. The other would be that Lopunny that we saw earlier. And by the way, if you're curious, we are on the Pokemon Global Link website, so you can go and see all of the different stats. Some of the most popular Pokemon of the tournament, of the metagame: Kangaskhan, Landorus, Thundurus. Not surprising there.
Yeah, looking at the stats for the current season of rating battles in the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire League. So this isn't like private information or anything. You just go to the Pokemon Global Link right now and look at this if you want to. Definitely if you're watching the stream and thinking about trying to get into the video game championships, the doubles letter and battle spot is the same rules as the tournament is this year. So you can just kind of go in there and see which Pokemon are popular, what Pokemon are likely to do, and there's a lot you can learn from these stats. I think that players looking to kind of get into the game, get better, there's a lot here for you.
Yeah, and you can look over stats for pretty much every Pokemon that's been used, assuming that someone has used it before. But right now we're looking at the Lopunny, which probably fewer people are using this Pokemon, and it looks like they're going for a much more offensive set than what we just saw John succeed with.
And that's something we can kind of learn from, too. I think the way that most players play a Pokemon, and maybe the way that, especially something obscure like this, you have to play some of this stuff a little bit differently to make it work in competitive play. I guess that's another thing maybe we could pass on to the audience here. I think if you're at home and you're like, wow, I really like that John has these like strange Pokemon that, I'm not seeing this like Landorus and Thundurus like I've seen in a lot of games. Like, how could I use Pokemon like this and do well in big tournaments? Well, a lot of it's figuring out what those Pokemon are good at and using them to their strengths.
Yeah.
I think the key basically is not just putting 3 attacks and Protect on a Pokemon that isn't used very frequently and expecting things to work out.
Right.
The best Pokemon at doing that sort of thing, that's your standard group of Pokemon, right? It's the ones that you see in every battle. That's why they get used, because when you run the simplest sets, they're usually what's the best, unless there's a big shift in what people are using. When you want to use something like Lopunny and do very well, what you need to do is kind of find out what it can do that's a little bit different. Not just trying to dish out damage, but what other tricks does this Pokemon have? Fake Out's a big one. While it's certainly not unique to it, it combines with other moves well. We see Encore as the 6th most popular move, which we saw from John yesterday. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to bust that move out today. And of course, at number 10, we see that big Teeter Dance, which isn't the most popular move in the world, but that is something that very few Pokemon get. I believe that's the only Mega Pokemon that gets it, and certainly not something you normally want to build your team around, but John used it very well there. And even though he has to protect and Teeter Dance most of the time, it's not like he has own tempo or something, which probably be going a little bit too far off the deep end there to work in a tournament like this. Lopunny was surprisingly valuable.
Yeah, and the most surprising thing about Lopunny is that it was still valuable even when it wasn't a Mega. So, as you can see, most Lopunnys are Mega, as was John's, but because it was paired with the Gengar, it didn't have to be Mega, and it was still able to be pretty effective when it was, out and not actively using its Mega-ness.
Yeah, I really love that, though. I think that's one thing that's really difficult about team building teams with 2 Mega Pokemon is that typically, in most situations, you can only use one of the 2 potential Mega Pokemon in a given battle. So Team Preview kind of becomes, I have to pick 3 of my 4 non-Mega Pokemon and 1 of my 2 Mega Pokemon. Unless you want to go really crazy. He's like, I'm not going to use either Mega Pokemon. I've got 2, but I don't need these. It doesn't happen very often. But when you have a Pokemon like Lopunny here who, at least since it can function as a support Pokemon without Mega Evolving, it gives you a lot more options. Being able to pick both of those Pokemon keeps you flexible, and there aren't too many Pokemon that can still be effective without Mega Evolving. Lots of them kind of require Mega version specific moves. Certainly that Drain Punch does get toned down when you're not Mega Lopunny, but it's not like, say, Mega Salamence or something, where if you try to pick normal Salamence, all of a sudden you're using actual normal type return and Hyper Voice and aren't really doing anything.
Or you're using regular Kangaskhan and cutting down your offensive power by an insane amount.
Yeah, more than half, really, because you lose both stats and Parental Bond. You're just kind of hanging out and faking out. It's kind of what, like...
You can fake out a Ghost, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's kind of what, like Lopunny would be if it didn't have Teeter Dance or Encores. It's like, I faked you out. And, oh, man, I didn't really think about where I was going from here, but I'm on the field.
Yeah, I mean, Fake Out is one of those moves that can instantly make any Pokemon viable. I mean, we've seen Pokemon like Delibird get used because it has, some of those unique abilities. And Fake Out's one of those moves that just instantly makes it at least pseudo-viable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's the best move in the game by any stretch of the imagination, but Fake Out enables a lot of things. If you have a Pokemon that has a speed disadvantage against one of your opponent's Pokemon, you kind of bring that Fake Out Pokemon in and suddenly kind of turn the tables on the quicker Pokemon. It allows for lots of setup. Trick Room, one of the most common things we see paired with Fake Out, though usually not in a Pokemon this quick. But some of the slower Fake Out Pokemon, Scrafty especially, really great on that sort of team. Also seeing, combined with Belly Drum, combined with Quiver Dance, Gavin most likely had in his team, though we never ended up seeing the Volcarona. A lot of different ways you can make use of it. We used to see Tailwind combined with it a lot last year, back when Talonflame was more popular. You may have noticed that Talonflame's kind of fallen off a little bit since last year. And,
what happened to Talonflame?
It turns out in a world with Pokemon that can actually take hits and intimidate, Talonflame back to flying in a sky somewhere, making a nest in a forest, and thinking of its younger days where it was a Pokemon champion.
Yeah, that's a little unfortunate for Talonflame. But yeah, you're right. Fake Out is one of those moves that sets up a lot of Pokemon, and in John's case, he used it to set up his Azumarill. And Azumarill is one of those Pokemon where you see it in Team Preview and you know exactly what's coming, but sometimes you can't stop it.
Yeah, and sometimes you try too hard to stop it, and it turns out Azumarill's not what your opponent picked at all. And that's one of the great strengths of a Pokemon like this. Team Preview is really fascinating in the video game championships where you only have to pick 4 of your 6 Pokemon, so you kind of have those decoy options, and you want all 6 of your Pokemon to be viable selections all the time. You don't want to just put, say, Zoroark on your team. I'm going to make my opponent think about this, but I'm never going to really pick Zoroark. That's going to feed you bad matchups. But having something like Azumarill there where your opponent kind of has to react to it because if they lead badly in it, they're just going to lose the game. Gavin lost to it once, even though he led pretty much perfectly into it. So you kind of see how much you have to react to a Pokemon like that. And it really creates a lot of pressure on your opponent Team Preview. I think Mega Gengar is another one of those Pokemon. Even Lopunny kind of was because you don't want to just give free Teeter Dances. And Togekiss Extra Drill, kind of another one of those combinations where you have to lead sort of specifically to it if you don't want to fall behind. So a lot of Pokemon, I guess, like that on John's team where it just makes turn 0, Team Preview, which we often say is the most important turn of the game, very challenging.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Belly Drum only a 50%-ish rate for moves for Azumarill. A lot of other people choosing to go with, for example, like a Choice Band instead. But basically, Azumarill does the same thing. It just hits hard.
Yeah, I mean, Choice Band and Assault Vest, both pretty common items on Azumarill. One thing with Azumarill in general, I guess, is that there's a very popular team right now that doesn't use Belly Drum on the Azumarill, so that's probably influencing the stats just a little bit. But, the Citrus Berry Belly Drum thing, certainly the most common thing Azumarill does. But again, kind of seeing the strength of the Pokemon and kind of the strength of Fairy typing as well. Azumarill is kind of another one of those Pokemon that you saw it when you're playing through your RPG. Maybe you used it to help beat some gym leaders, and that was pretty much where things stopped before, right? Azumarill just hung out in the PC and rooted you on while you played in tournaments. But now that's Fairy type. It's joined us in the the championships here. It's playing in some tournaments. It's getting to see what all of its friends were doing before.
And you can see how friendly the Azumarill is too. Just waving you on from the Pokemon Global link.
It's just like, yo, I'm here now, guys. Like, look at me. Didn't think I was going to be a good Pokemon, but I got
I can still help.
Yeah, I got an ability that doubles my attack one generation. Then they made me a fairy type. Like, I don't know, like somebody really just like felt bad for us. Like, oh, we made this cool Pokemon, but
let's make it useful too.
Let's make it good. And it is now. Really, it's a very uniquely good Pokemon too. One thing that really helped it also is that the way breeding work changed a little bit in Pokemon X and Y, so that it was able to get both Belly Drum and Aqua Jet at the same time. So, in addition to gaining the Fairy type, there's two huge boons for it. That helped it both this season and last season, which is great because it's always nice when you have a Pokemon that's like very unique. You know, there's no other Pokemon that's the typing it does that we see, and also, you know, the Belly Drum, Aqua Jet, and really Belly Drum priority move combination in general is unique to Azumarill. So there's nothing quite like it, and again, that's why people have to react to it so much in Team Preview because you know, a priority attack boosted by 6 levels of attack. You don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, that's the thing because Belly Drum, it maximizes your attack, but it also cuts your health in half. So it makes you a lot more vulnerable to getting blown up by, Thunderbolts or any type of grass type attack on Azumarill. But if you have this Aqua Jet, you get to bypass most of that. And there's not really much of anything that your opponent can do about it.
Yeah, a lot of the Pokemon that normally counter Azumarill, such as Thundurus, suddenly don't anymore. That's why we saw it just using those taunts. Because I realized, well, if Azumarill decides to target me and I Thunderbolt, I'm just going to faint. So to at least accomplish something, and taunting Azumarill actually ended up being surprisingly effective there. Kind of another one of those strange cases of taunt. We could always mention that we just think about it being one of those moves that you use mostly to shut down support Pokemon, but we saw how much it annoyed Aegislash to be taunted yesterday. And even Azumarill, when you use that Belly Drum, since you're losing all that health, you have to be very conservative with Azumarill. You've got that giant attack boost. You want to make as much use of it as you can, so after you protect until you're safe, you want to not take any risks because it's not like you can just, I'll just get a Belly Drum with a different Pokemon. No, you've got to make that count. And not being able to protect really makes Azumarill more predictable and forces it to attack in situations where it's not completely safe and has to take an attack back. So, Taunt again showing its strength, but also kind of follow me and Fake Out as well because it can protect Azumarill from that too.
Yeah, a Pokemon like Azumarill draws a lot of attention just by existing on the field. So if you take out the option of Protect, you basically make your life a whole lot easier. It makes predictions a lot easier. It makes, identifying your next couple moves a lot easier because you know that Azumarill is probably not going to switch out because then it loses all of its boosts, and it's just sort of a sitting rabbit there. It's just waiting for something to hit it.
Yeah, it's the same sort of idea, I guess, that Azumarill, once it's on the field, when it can protect it with that boosted attack from Belly Drum, it's kind of the same problem with having it in Team Preview, right? It's like it's there, it's not necessarily going to attack this turn, but it's just so threatening that you kind of feel like you have to attack into that slot because otherwise you could just be giving up a free Pokemon, and it forces you to play differently, whereas a Protect kind of cleans that up and forces it to play honest and makes things easier. If you guys are wondering why I'm spending so much time on the Pokemon Global Link, by the way, we're getting close to getting the next match ready. The matches on the floor are running a little bit slower than the stream match, so, Azumarill is a pretty fun Pokemon.
For those of you who this is your first Swiss tournament you're watching, again, everyone plays at the same time, so we can't pair round 2 until everyone has completed their battles. The benefit here is that everyone gets to play every round, so even if you go X and 2 early, you still get to keep playing, and especially in a field this talented, it's really important to keep getting that experience in. So there are guaranteed at least 6 rounds of top-level VGC play.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think playing, what I say, it wouldn't be uncommon, I guess, to see any of these players, like a regional top cut, especially deep in a regional top cut. So getting to play 6 rounds against players here, I think even if some of these guys don't quite have the performance they're hoping for here, playing a serious best of 3 against players of this level, there's a lot you can learn from it. There's a lot you can kind of take out of the way you lose matches. Sometimes I think that's a lot more valuable than winning. If you're not going to get that World's Invitation, it's almost better in some ways to have those losses, be able to look back and realize, like, okay, I see what happened in this game, I see what happened in this series. Like, maybe I lost the first game, kind of threw me off a little bit. I realized that, in the future I need to react better to this sort of thing happening. I can go a long way. We see every year, especially nationals, late in the tournament, worlds, where some players will look like they'll start at a good run, things will go sour for them, but the next year they'll come back and do a lot better because they'll learn from that experience.
Yeah, and this is basically a chance to get all of that experience in one day. I mean, again, like you mentioned, these are people who are at the top cut of regionals. If you're just playing, one and done, or 2 and done, then you miss out on a whole wealth of experience. And also, it's just, everyone's here because they want to play Pokemon. They're here to play games of Pokemon. So having the ability to play 6 rounds of Pokemon no matter what, it's always going to be good.
Yeah, and of course, on top of that, they're playing for a few things here. They have a top 8 player is going to make it into the top cut of the tournament.
Yep.
As we're kind of in the middle cut, jokingly, as we mentioned before, which gives them a shot at some pretty significant prizes, as well as an invitation to Worlds.
$2 million in prizing over the course of the season. It's a little bit of money.
Yeah, some big scholarships available for the top cut of this tournament. So, today, one of these players, actually several of these players, are going to be walking home with some pretty nice change. And